Hey everyone, it's Alex Morkit with realestateshorts.com. Today we're going to talk about the internal rate of return in commercial real estate. We're going to define what it is, both in and out of the classroom. We're going to explore how it's calculated, more importantly, how it's applied, and then some important considerations, common errors, problems, rebuttals, debates had around that topic, and what you can do for them. Let's get into it. All right, so to kick things off, let's first define what the internal rate of return is. And so let's get the academic side out of this first. Academically, IRR is defined as the discount rate that makes the net present value of an investment equal to zero. I completely understand that that doesn't mean much to a lot of folks. So I think the better definition is, let's call it the layman's definition, the street definition, the non-academic definition, and that's the average annualized rate of return of an investment over a certain period of time. It's important to keep each one of those components as part of that phrase, because when you remove one, then we begin to kind of distort the definition enough that we may mistakenly be talking about another return metric. So again, the average annualized rate of return of an investment over a certain period of time. Given this, the internal rate of return has a lot of power because it ends up being one of the key metrics used by investors to help say, will I purchase this property or not? It also helps answer the question of what is the total return on this investment. Now I use this kind of concept of total return in air quotes because total return could mean a lot of different things to a lot of different people. So I would still kind of caution you and push you back to that second definition, again, of the average annualized rate of return of an investment over a certain amount of time. So how do you calculate internal rate of return? So unfortunately, it's certainly possible to do it by hand, but it's so laborious and time consuming, it's probably best that you leave the calculations up to a spreadsheet or a calculator. Why? Because it is an iterative process. If you keep in mind the textbook definition of the discount rate that makes net present value equal to zero, you have to iterate and test against what discount rate arrives at that zero result. So you would start at 10%. And if you're too high, then you'd go to 11%. And if you're too low, you'd go back and forth until you came up with the truth. Going through those manual present value calculations takes a lot of time. When in a spreadsheet, it's the press of a button and you get a result. So now that I've kind of given the disclaimer for why I would recommend using either a calculator or a spreadsheet, I'd like to illustrate what happens in a spreadsheet. So I think organization is key. As you can see here, we've defined first time, second the investment itself, the $1 million in this case, and then third, most importantly, is the organization of what the future cash flows of this investment look like. So we'll speak about this in a minute, but if you organize incorrectly or poorly, and if you leave out certain critical cash flows or timing of those cash flows, you're going to either come up with an error or an incorrect estimate. So it's that formatting and organization that will go a long way to help ensure that you can avoid a lot of the errors that are typically or often found in the market. So in this example, we have $1 million worth of purchase price. You'll collect interim rental payments, so $70,000 worth of net operating income or cash flow during the periods. And then all the way at the end of year 5, you'll sell the property and collect $1.5 million. So the total stream of cash flows is what I've just highlighted. It's the initial $1 million payment, the collection of all the operating cash flows, and then ultimately the resale proceeds, what happens when you sell the property. So it is the total annual cash flows that we'll be using to help estimate internal rate of return. So I'm sure you're going to ask next, what is the function? How do I? And in this case, it's relatively straightforward. So we have internal rate of return, IRR. So equals IRR, open parentheses, and then you simply select all the cash flows. You'll notice that everything from the $1 million through the $1.578 million. Keep in mind that last period's cash flow is the combination of what you sold it for as well as all the rent that you collected in that period. So if you're selecting all cash flows in that IRR function, you'll typically come up with a correct answer, notwithstanding some strange circumstance of how much you collected in a given period. So most traditional real estate investments will follow a cash flow pattern similar to this, and this IRR function and formula will work like a charm. So in this case, when we hit enter after applying equals IRR and selecting all the cash flows, we'll get an internal rate of return of a hair over 14%. So what does this really mean to you? This means that you are earning 14.7% return on that $1 million invested on average every year for the next 5 years. And this is a really powerful statement because now you can use this to compare investment alternatives. We'll dive into that next. The proof here for the academics in you. In this case, we're proving that if you were to discount this future stream of cash flows at that 14.79 and change percent return, you'll arrive at a present value of $1 million, the exact same thing it cost you. So the net present value is 0. So why is this so important? So let's say you've estimated these future cash flows. And in doing so, you've estimated this internal rate of return. Now let's say you do the exact same process for multiple properties. Property A, B, and C. Now you can come back and say, this is why I think I should choose property A versus property B or C. It may not have the highest return overall, property B does. However, maybe its risk return profile is best for me. And here's why. So it's best to use IRR as a comparative measure of return so that you can begin to compare investment alternatives. And that's why this tends to be a bit more powerful and constructive than using present value. Present value is great at helping you determine the most you should pay, but it's difficult to use that as a measure of overall investment performance because it's tough to compare $1 million here to $1.5 million there. However, it's very easy to say option A earns 14.7% and option B earns 18%. Let me evaluate the pros and cons of each and make a choice accordingly. So considerations, errors that you'll typically find, I think the most common is the organization of your cash flows, namely leaving out, excluding, or forgetting to include that final resale cash flow. So if you'll pay attention to internal rate of return, the 14.79%, if you exclude, mistakenly exclude, ignore having sold the property at some point in the future, your internal rate of return is likely going to result in some kind of error. Now, truth be told, it's not that the error is incorrect. It's not that the IRR that's being calculated is wrong, but it's wrong for you in that you likely meant to sell the property at some point in time, realize the receipt of those proceeds, and they should be included in your total cash flows. So another error that typically comes up is you forget to include that initial cash flow. So if you don't include the initial cash flow, there's no way for you to estimate a return. You can't estimate a return on nothing invested. So you always need to, again, pay attention to the organization of this cash flow pattern. As long as you have a cash outflow in the beginning and a sizable cash or capital event inflow at some point in the future, chances are good your IRR equations and your IRR functions are going to work correctly. The last piece to keep in mind is that the intervals between these cash flows need to be consistent. So for example, in this case, we have years, and it's the same number of years between every interval, 1 year, 1 period. This tends to throw IRR off, maybe more importantly, throw Excel in its calculation of IRR off when you have inconsistent intervals. So maybe I have a purchase price January 1st, and then February 27th, I have another cash flow. March 15th, I have another cash flow. June 30th, I have another cash flow. So with inconsistent periods, it's probably best to use a more flexible function, the XIRR function, and we'll explore that in much more detail in another episode. So for now, just simply keep in mind, one of the breaking points of using the IRR function is inconsistent periods. Again, this boils down to organization. As long as you have, let's say, years or months or some kind of consistent interval in between, you'll be okay in its calculation. So just to recap, we covered IRR, what it means academically, what it means professionally or outside of the academic setting, so that you could speak to your great-grandmother and tell her what IRR really means in a way that she could understand it. From there, we began to introduce how to calculate it via the IRR function, and then some of the pros and cons of that function, some pitfalls and common errors and how to avoid them. So if you found this episode helpful, I'd encourage you to take a look at some of the related topics as we continue to explore other return metrics and variables. And as always, if you have any questions, comments, or feedback, I look forward to hearing from you. Look forward to it.